Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit and well. I want to say a very quick good morning to Sight Movements UK over on Instagram, to Zanetti Marcello over on Instagram as well. Lots and lots of people over on Instagram. I also need to say a very quick good morning to Mr. Andy Thornton, who is here. Good morning, one and all. He says Gary Muirhead is here as well. If I remember rightly, winner of yesterday's competition. Dan Cullen's here as well. Woohoo, he says. Top of the morning, you porn fanatics on this wonderful Thursday. I don't know what you're doing that's making it wonderful. It's a bit drizzly out where I am, but it's okay. Still fairly warm. Still wearing the t-shirt, so doing okay. How are we all? Hope we're all fit and well. Quick heads up, our morning monologue today, a little bit longer than usual. It's a work of fiction, but I think it will resonate, at least hopefully so. Sorry, I'm just getting messages coming through on my watch, which I could do without this time in the morning. Let me tidy up my screen at the same time. Oh, that one. There we are. That looks much, much nicer. You can see my happy, smiling face. See? Yes, as I say, lots and lots to get through. We've got a prize to give away, or two prizes to give away today. That's a good start because I've just dropped one of them. Let me give you a very quick glimpse. Those are up for grabs today. We'll come back to that in just a moment. But yes, if you can stick around for the morning monologue, it's called, I'll tell you about it in a moment, but it's called What Operators Really Want. As I say, work of fiction. We'll come back to that at the very end of the show. Who else do we have here? Andy Darvell has just said, morning, morning, morning. I've actually been flat out this morning. It's good news, good news. Now time for a break among friends. Ken Hatcher is here as well, with weather. It's that time of year, Ken, isn't it? It's that time of year. I'm at the moment, I went down to the post office yesterday to post off all of the prizes that were outstanding over the past couple of days. Didn't know what to wear. Was it a jumper? Was it a jacket? In the end, I went in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. Cold. Not entirely sure where we are at the moment. Jim Turner's just arrived. Morning, Jim. Thank you for being here, my friend, and thank you for your company. Let's crack on, shall we? Without further ado, I'm going to roll the intro, post the question of the day. I'm not going to post the question of the day because there isn't one, but I'm going to get this show on the road after. I will get onto that in just a moment, but Gary Muirhead said, did you find out what his name is yet, the guy at the post office? How does one go about that? Being British and kind of socially awkward by birth, how does one go into the post office and say, you know, about 18 months ago, we had a moment, we shared a moment, we bonded, and I told you my name and you told me yours. I don't remember yours. Is there a polite way of saying any of that? If you have any idea, please let me know. In the meantime, hang on a minute. Let's have a look. Andy, no, not yeah. Andy Darvell says, "No time for a break yet. Now I've got to unload a wagon of rebar." There you are. Jim Turner reckons the man down the post office is Mr. Stamp. I think his name's a bit longer than that. I'll get over it one of these days. I'm actually hoping that the post office will change ownership so that I can start afresh. That's the only way I can see to fix it. Oh, well done, Mustafa Stamp. Well done, Jim. I'm very impressed with that. I may go with that just to see how he feels about it. Probably not good. Gary Muirhead, check up on company's house and see who the shop owner is. That's a thought. But then, am I convinced that the guy behind the counter is actually the owner? What if I go in there and call him, I don't know, Kuthrapolli or something like that, and that turns out to be his boss? Where does that leave me? Minefield, isn't it? Anyway, it's Thursday, the 16th of October. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. In today's show, Demolition on the Deerfoot Trail. That's Priestley Demolition in action. From extraction to restoration with the fine folks at Hyundai. And Shantui target sustainability. Plus, I've already flagged this up, but I am going to tell you again. My morning monologue today is what operators really want. And it involves Mel Gibson, kind of. You kind of have to stick around for that. Mark Whiting, I've been treading water up until now. Mark Whiting has just arrived, so I can actually start the show properly. Chris Ford is here as well. Morning, Top Man, he says. Morning to you. Gary Muirhead saying, that's a nice hat. Yeah, it's a Dig Bit special, all the way from Dig Bits land, courtesy of our friend Marcus over there. Keep it like Andy, flat out or nothing. I'm moving boxes, says Dan Cullen. Drainage ones. Okay. Okay, so I've already flagged up the fact that we have. Hang on a minute. Andy Thornton says, go to the captain and say, do you know who I am in a loud voice? And when they say no, tell them and say, how do you do? English politeness means they'll tell you theirs. No, that's not how it works at all. He knows my name. I walk through the door and he goes, morning, Mark. And I do, morning, sir, because I don't know his name. LC International, rapidly becoming a bit of a regular on the show. Wouldn't care to be an advertiser as well, would you? I thought LC International, your source of Sunward and Hydromic finery. Jim Turner says, if he isn't the owner, he'll definitely be a relative. That's one thing I definitely admire about our Asian immigrants, their shrewd business ethic and looking after their families as well. Yeah, absolutely. There's a thought. Yeah, be like Trigger and call him Dave. I wonder. I call him Mr. Post-it. It's a thought. Anyway, let's crack on, shall we? I've got a prize. I've got two prizes for you today. Two. That's one. There's two. First prize is that. Now, I don't know if the camera's... Yeah, it looks like it's picking it up. I don't know if you can see that, but that's kind of a black-on-black camouflage effect on that. This hat is all the way from the USA. It's obviously a case hat. It's got the mesh back, proper trucker style. Feels very nice and shiny. I'm not sure the camouflage will work, being black on black, but what you need with that is probably something to offset all that black. Something like those. Yes. You too could look like the drummer from the Ting Tings or somebody. Yes, white pair of sunglasses. They're from Altec. Both of those are from the US of A. I picked them both up at Utility Expo, and they are up for grabs. How do you get your hands on those? Andy Darvell says, now that's a sexy hat. Dan Cullen saying, hands off, that's mine. Andy Darvell saying, stealth camo. It kind of is. And Neil Bruce, all the way from New Zealand. Good morning to you, fella. Yes, how do you win those? Quite easily, really. All you need to do over the course of the next minute is type the word case, CASE, into the chat. Case, CASE. Now, while you're doing that, I do want to do a very quick warning to those watching over on Instagram. If you are watching on Instagram, you can't enter from there. You need to go and find Demolition News over on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or YouTube, and you can enter there. If you'd like to enter the prize to win, or the draw to win the black camouflage hat or the white sunglasses, both are available, but you need to head over there now. So let me give you the minute to win it. Looks like this today.
T-minus 1 minute. T-minus 50 seconds. T-minus 40 seconds. T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Apparently, you have a 1 in 9 chance of winning today. Lots and lots of people talking about it. Let's have a look. Who have we got entering? Oh, I do want to focus on this. Jim Turner says, all camo is stealth, or it's not camo. It's a good point. You've seen those photographs doing the rounds of people wearing camouflage trousers and a high-vis jacket. Make up your mind, fellas. Yeah, lots and lots of entries there. Chris thought, could this be an open and shut case? Which is kind of reflective of exactly what Andy Thornton says. Open and shut. Yeah, open and shut case. Right, we've got a 1 in 9 chance. Dan desperately wants to win. I think Dan does. I think also our friend in New Zealand wants to win as well, because he hasn't yet. And interesting to see LC International entering. Listen, you all are welcome. Are you permitted to wear rival brand clothing? Just asking for a friend, really. Here we go. Let me do the draw. Dan Cullen. Dan Cullen has landed the hat, which seems oddly appropriate given the fact that, Dan is a keen and avid collector of hats. Dan, congratulations. You have a new case hat that looks like that. You also have a rather funky pair of sunglasses. Don't think you're going to need the sunglasses today because it's chucking it down with rain outside. But yeah, there you are. And there we are. Andy Thornton says it was meant to be. LC International saying, congrats, Dan. Well done, Dan. Well deserved, mate. Yeah, absolutely. Dan, I'm fairly sure I've got your address, but please remind me of it so I can get that in the post. Neil Bruce feels like he's being cheated, but I promise you he's not. Darn it, he says. Dan saying, oh my God, thanks. No rain here. And yet you're only up the road. I say it's raining here. It was raining before I started the show. I don't know what it's doing out there right now, but it certainly was raining this morning. Dan, thank you, guys. Well done, Dan. How many hats have you got? A lot, I think, would be the answer on that. And Andy Dovell, well done, Hatman Dan. Hatman Dan. Dan the Hat. Makes him sound like an East End gangster, doesn't it? LC International, I still need to get in touch. That's Dan Cullen. The Hat Man wants to be in touch with LC International. Dan, meet LC International. LC International, meet Dan. Get your heads together. Go and have a play on some Hydromech and some Sunward equipment, Dan. And then give us your thoughts. Take a camera with you. Film a film. Or LC International, invite both of us down. I'll bring the camera and we'll have a bit of a play. Oh, there you are. Andy Dovell says, no rain in Milton Keynes. Good, because we wouldn't want those concrete cows getting damp, would we? Jim Turner, fair play, Dan. 220 plant hats at the moment. 220. I had a count up the other day. I think I've got just shy of 100 here. There are a few duplicates which I don't actually count. But yeah, I'm lagging behind, mainly because I give most of mine away. I have to say the one I gave away yesterday was very grudgingly. The Takuchi one was very, very smart. Do you still have the electric oven to give away as a prize? I do. I was kind of. It's here. Hang on. There you go. Electric lunchbox that actually was provided by Gary Muirhead about a year ago. And it got put in a box and completely forgotten about. And it's entirely my fault, and I can only apologise. But we're going to be giving that away. I thought we'd wait until the weather took a bit of a turn, started to get really chilly. I think it was more appropriate. But if anyone wants to win that before, let me know. Dan the Hat Man, can I have your hat? Neil Bruce, do they not have hats down in New Zealand? If it was raining in Milton Keynes, the concrete cows would be lying down. Is that how it works? Chris Ford says, if I'd won, I'd have donated it to LC International just to see your face as you round up the postage. Well, it's not LC International that's the problem. It's Neil Bruce that's the problem. LC International just down the road. I think Kent or thereabouts. Neil Bruce is the one that I'm dreading. I'd be up for reviewing their kit, says Jim Turner, if they're up for dropping some off at my place. How far do you go, LC International? What is your territory for sales of Hydromech and Sunward equipment? Jim is up in kind of Nottinghamshire way. Do you go that far? I'd love to know. I do think we need to get our heads together. I'm very happy to have you on the show, and I'm more than happy to chat with you on a daily basis. But I think we should be doing a bit more of that, shouldn't we? And Andy Darvell saying, "Listen, we're rapidly planning an open day here. I'll join Dan at LC International. LC International, put us on a day, put us on an afternoon, do something. I don't know. I don't know what the connection is, the Wi-Fi and broadband connection is like where you are. But hey, listen, we might even do a live show direct from there, or possibly record one and then play it the following day. I don't know. We've had a message from Instagram, which is quite ironic actually. It's from somebody called Louise Valenciano. I don't know if I got that spelling correct or that pronunciation right, but they've just said, "I don't understand English," but they've typed it in perfect English. You're doing better than you think. Let's have a look. Be cool. Me, Andy, and you, Mark. Yeah, listen, I'm game. Dan saying a Saturday would be ace. Defo a Saturday, says Andy Darvell. Yeah, listen, LC International. If you've got nothing better to do one Saturday, and you'd welcome some reprobates from this here part, let us know. Ken Hatcher says, I've got 5G, but it's very patchy on this site. That is a constant challenge. It really is a challenge. I was hoping our connection at the Airbnb in Kentucky was okay, but it was hit and miss. Excuse me, bit of my breakfast in my teeth. Yeah, it was hit and miss. Like when we got back from the show, I could usually just watch a live stream or watch YouTube or whatever. Give it a couple of hours, and I had nothing at all. So I wasn't able to broadcast from there. But yeah, it is a bit of a challenge. How far is LC from Glasgow? Maybe I can turn up too. As I say, I'm fairly sure LC International are down Kent way, Kent or Sussex. I seem to remember. LC International, where are you in the world? I'll look it up if not. If you're gone by now. And Garvin over at Mostly Diggers has just arrived. You keep freezing here. Been like it for weeks now. Allow me to quickly demonstrate how Ken Hatcher is watching this show. Yeah, like that. We're in Kent. Yes, there you are, in the Garden of England. Anybody fancying a trip to the Garden of England one Saturday, let us know. LC International, if you'd like to throw open your doors, we'll make your life a living misery. Gary, you get an Airbnb, we'll all meet at LC International as a meeting point. You can get anywhere in the world in a day, fellas. Yeah, you can. Not necessarily conveniently or cheaply, but you can. Anyway, all of that's done and dusted. Let's crack on, shall we? I do need to tidy up my screen, get rid of that, because it is time for a smidgen of this. Yeah, I wish the news were better. Let's just tidy up my screen just a touch. Do it like that. There we are. This is coming to you from Construction Inquirer this morning. August output dips to end a sluggish summer for construction. Construction output fell 0.3% in August 2025, bringing to an end a summer of sluggish growth. Latest figures from the ONS, that's the Office for National Statistics, showed the sector lagging behind the wider economy, which grew by 0.1% in August, as many builders struggled to move from pre-construction to live starts amid ongoing investor caution. Across the 3 months to August, output was still 0.3% higher, driven by private housing repair and maintenance, up 5.6%. But some economists have privately questioned the reliability of these figures, which have fluctuated sharply over the past few years. I don't think we needed, what's that Bob Dylan line? Don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. I think we all kind of knew that things were a bit tough out there. There you have it in black and white. Things are most definitely tough out there. What do we got over here? Depends what day to get around the world, and Elsie International are laughing. Yes, a trip to Kent. Trip to Kent would be very nice. Whereabouts in Kent are you? Right, we had an office back in the day down in Tenterden in Kent. There's a regular down there. Are you anywhere near that? It's unbelievable how many people are struggling for work. I filled a notepad in a month with people looking for work. Yeah, I'm not surprised at that at all. Yeah, it is. It is. I say it's tough out there. That's not entirely true. I think it is a bit of a regional thing. Here in London, I'm due to go into London in a day or two's time, and I know over there, or over there, in there, lots of cranes, lots of activity, lots of demolition work going on. All is right with the world. Get a bit further afield, not quite so healthy. So yeah, that headline from the Construction Inquirer brings us up to date, but doesn't tell us anything we didn't already know. Let's start, shall we? Let's start with a bit of Caterpillar, and then we'll go to see a bit of Canadian demolition, which is very nice, by the way. After. Now, I will move on in a moment, but obviously those are drum cutters, rotary cutters, grinders, call them what you will. We had a question. I think it may have come from Dan Kahn, actually, but I can't actually remember. When we featured those before, when we featured drum cutters in the past, we had a question about the impact and the wear and tear on the carrier machine. While I was in the States, I met up with Rock Zone, and they make their own rock crushers, rock grinders rather, and I was asking them that very question. And a couple of points which I thought were very interesting. First point was the wear and tear on the carrier machine from a drum cutter is less than a hydraulic breaker, which is kind of what it's competing with. But also, which I found equally interesting, was when you're breaking a trench in hard rock with a breaker, you kind of end up taking out more material than you really need to, because by nature you're basically cutting a V, and what you actually want is a square. With a grinder, you're doing it once and you're getting that square side, square bottom, and you're cutting less, and you're grinding the material for reinstatement at the same time. Whereas with a breaker, you're shifting the profile into a V, which is not necessarily what you want, and you've also got to process the material. Very interesting point of view. Lots and lots to talk about the current state of the market. It's not tough, but it also has rates stuck in the mix. Yep. Here's how the industry works. I'll tell you this. I just want to say good morning to Jonathan Dowling from Demo Boys over on Instagram, who's just joined us all the way from the USA. Morning, Jonathan. Good to see you here, my friend. Here's how the industry works. Here we are today. Work starts to improve, and our rates go up. This is rates for pay, rates for plant hire, rates for everything. And they start to go up. And they go up. And they go up. And then the industry takes a bit of a downturn. And then the rates go down, and they go down, and they go down. So at one point, we will be back precisely where we started. So each time there's a peak and a trough, we end up basically back where we started, which is why wages, plant hire rates, and so on very rarely shift. Yeah. Demo Dalv, Andy Darvell says it always starts to slow down this time of year, but it does seem to be slower. Yeah, it does. I do know some good sized jobs starting next year in my area from a guy higher up in Lynch. I need to find probably a day. There is going to be something of a gold rush in the demolition industry here in the UK in the next year or two. It's coming. It's coming. It's so close you can almost taste it. It's just not quite here yet. Won't take a lot, but it when it happens, lots and lots of people will be making some pretty good money out of it. It won't be easy, but and we've also had somebody from Colombia, Naturize. Not sure that's how you pronounce their name, but Saludos desde Colombia, which I think is good morning from Colombia. Spanish, not my best, not my strong suit, but good morning. Buenos dias? Bom dia? I don't know. Jim Turner says, Dan, you need to start getting paid out for your job groups. You're missing out on a fortune. I agree 100%. I do. And listen, I know, Dan, I know you started your groups basically as an altruistic thing, but, you know, they take time, they take effort, and that time and effort is worth money. Yes, and our friend Mostly Diggers, Garvin, just corrected me. Saludos is greetings. Greetings. So greetings from Colombia. Gracias, I guess. A lot of people don't want to work for pennies either, so it's really a mixed bag, as some folks only look for work within 20 miles and they limit themselves. I've just mentioned something else I'm planning to write, but I also want to write about those things that we've come to accept. I was on LinkedIn before I started the show today, and somebody I know in the demolition industry was talking about the fact that they'd been up at sort of 4:30 to catch the train into London, which, you know, each to their own. Not what I'd call a good day out, but that's what they wanted to do. But when did we all accept the fact that we had to be up out of bed at arse o'clock to satisfy the demands of our employer and the project? And when you think about all the other things that we've come to accept over the years, like a lot of people being pushed into self-employment rather than direct employment, pushed into self-employment and, you know, with the subsequent loss of many of their workers' rights and so on. When did we accept that? I may write that one day. Andy Thornton says that's a serious bit of kit. That's the Cat rotary cutters. And it was Dan that asked about the wear and tear on the carrier machines. Very good points. As I say, these things float around in the back of my mind until I'm stood in front of the person that's got the right answer. Chris Ford says, on about rates, I've been offered a rate for some scrap, which is less than it was 20, or less than I was getting 25 years ago. Yeah. I wish I'd kept check on it. We used to, back in the day when I was on Contract Journal, we used to occasionally publish average rates for plant hire. It had to be an average because obviously more expensive in London and the southeast, cheaper the further north you went, and so on down the line. But we used to publish average rates. I wonder how much those average rates have shifted, and particularly taking into account the rise and rise and rise in the cost of the equipment itself, the insurance that goes with it, and everything else, and inflation. I reckon those rates have probably gone backwards. Garvin says, so many people I know leave at 4:30 and 5 for long commutes daily. I did it myself, but it's a terrible lifestyle, especially in groundworks, as we're always last on site each day too. Yeah, and we talk. I think we talk about work-life balance. I think that's kind of the unseen part. You know, I think we've all bought into the work hard, work hard, play hard, and all of that kind of thing. I'm a bit past all that now, but I think we've bought into that. But what does that do to you? You know, if you're having to be up at 4:30 in the morning, what time are you going to bed? If you're a married person or you're in a relationship, how much time are you actually spending with your other half? You know, if you're rolling through the door at 7, 8, 9 o'clock by the time you've got home and everything else, have something to eat, tell them about the traffic on the way home, and then you're going to bed. And then you repeat the following day. That's no way to live your life, is it? Dan says, I love traveling to various parts of the UK and love getting up at 3 to 4 a.m. too, as you meet some interesting people too. Listen, if it's a lifestyle choice, I think that's absolutely fine. But I think when it's forced upon you, should we accept that? Chris Ford says, excuse me. When I had my first JCB, the rate was £7 an hour. It was a few years ago, mind. I wonder how that stacks up now. And obviously, it will be more now. But when you think about the relative cost of living, the relative cost of the machine, I wonder how much that has shifted. I'm going to say good morning to Heavy Duty Enterprises over on Instagram. Don't know what they do, but they sound like my kind of people. Jim Turner says scrap was supposed to rise considerably, but it hasn't. So it can sit until it does. Yeah, if you've got the space to hang on to your scrap until the market moves in your favour, why not? Dan Cullen says 360 op is between £19 to £26 an hour. Dozer £24.50 to £30 an hour. Lots and lots of things there. Let's have a look. Our friend Reverend Paul Latham. I kind of want some religious music to come in here. Bit of that for Reverend Paul Latham. Morning all. Access equipment has definitely gone backwards regarding rates. Hire companies are now keeping equipment longer, trying to break even. Yeah. Now, again, this is another subject that we've talked about at length. I don't actually believe there's anything wrong in hanging on to equipment for that little bit longer, getting more value out of it. It means a bit less equipment being made and the expending of carbon and all that. I think that's a good thing. Is that a good thing? Is it a good thing, particularly in access? How long is too long in access equipment? Now, Paul obviously runs a very reputable company, and I'm sure he's got all the safeguards in place and so on. But is that what we want? And if you're having to hang on to equipment so it's actually past its best in order to extract every last bit of value out of it, is your company actually viable? Just asking. All depends on developers, subcontractor, agents, payment contractors. They all want a penny for your worth. Yeah. I do wonder about that. When you think about the complexity of the system, tier one, main contractor, subcontractor, hire a specialist contractor and all that. By the time you get down here to the guy that's actually operating the machine, everybody has had their little, what was that expression from The Godfather? They've all dipped their beak, haven't they? They've all wet their beak. And by the time it gets down to the guy on the ground that's actually doing the work, he's surrounded by people with wet beaks and his beak is bone dry. If you've seen The Godfather, and I think that may have been Godfather Part 2, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you'll think I'm a madman. Right, okay. Every time I say this, I have some pet demolition contractors around the world. Cardim in France, Despe in Italy, so on down the line. My favourite of the Canadians, not that this reflects my coverage, but my favourite of the Canadians rather is Priestley, and I like them because they do stuff like this. Yeah, top work by Priestley Demolition. And Ryan Priestley, absolute gent he is. Absolute gent. Dan Cullen enjoying the music. Nice equipment there as well. What have we got? Somebody, hang on a minute. Andy Darwell says, never demoed a bridge. Would love to one day. Get yourself a gig with Armac, the Bridge Busters. That's the way to go. Andy Thornton saying, perfect music would have been Road to Nowhere. Bit of Talking Heads. Can't go wrong with a bit of Talking Heads. Glad they didn't use that though, because I would have been stung for copyright issues. Same as on here in Wisley. Lynch has some new kit here now too. Lynch seem to have new kit everywhere, don't they? They really do. We're going to be back with a bit of Hitachi in a moment after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Mines and quarries have a life cycle from extraction through to restoration. We dig a big hole, we fill it back in again. In this instance, Hitachi have been there throughout.
This has certainly evolved to being more of an adventure than, being here for monetary reasons, right? For me, it is a pleasure to be here 5 months of the year with these people, right? Family, extraordinary human beings, and I love the state of Alaska. So for me, coming from the East Coast and being able to spend time like 5 months a year in Alaska, it's been the greatest experience. This is where I want to be. So we're drilling at that location. We're running our wash plant here, and also we're doing reclamation simultaneously. So there's a lot going on at the operation right now. Up here, across the way, you have actually Hitachi feeding the plant. But we are running gold right now. That is our wash plant. You can see the water coming down. That is a trommel system. It's a great machine. It never, ever breaks, honestly. That's a very large machine. That's a Hitachi 800. That has been a wonderful machine for us. We own non-Hitachi, but to be very honest, right, and not biased, but it's the best excavator. It's what they're known for. It's the best excavator. Power is extraordinary. But if you would ask me what's the thing that stands out the most is uptime. And when you are a mine that operates 4.5 months of the year, being down for 4 or 5 days, you're now infringing on 1-2% of your season, right? So uptime is everything. So that's the main reason why we choose Hitachi is uptime. So Mark's been here 13 years.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, we're blessed to have him here for 13 years.
I'm blessed to be here.
Yeah.
Best boss ever.
I'm the main operator here at Valdez Creek Mine. I dig the pit. I operate the big Hitachi here to do reclamation, load trucks. We have a 800 right up the hill here. We got another 330 up there. And now we have the 690. It's such a powerful machine. I mean, and comfortable cab. And that's the key, is just being comfortable in there.
Every year we rent a large excavator from CMI out of the Fairbanks office, and this year we got a Hitachi 690 from them. Beautiful machine. And with CMI, they're awesome and great service, great human beings. We're very remote, and the key is having that fast response time, not only on the phone, but actually coming out here. They have just been awesome at customer service. I'm very conscious of what I put out in the world. Like, it's all I think about, right, is the impact that I can have on someone else, especially in Alaska. That always comes back to you. It's the most communal state in the United States, and the ability to look forward and say that the next 5 or 10 years I'll be doing business with CMI and using Hitachi excavators, that's a great feeling for me. So one of our responsibilities is we have to take this creek, which is called White Creek, and we have to move it and bring it back to its original location of over 50 years ago. So what you see that excavator doing right now is it's creating a new channel for the creek. Yeah, making sure you put everything back better than the way it was is the standard. It's pretty brutal here outside of the middle of May. maybe to the very, very beginning of October. So we operate in the summer, fall months as best we can. We operate 24 hours a day. We'll move between 800,000 and 1 million yards a season. So 4 months later, 24 hours a day, we'll achieve our goals. Camp life, it's really, really important to have a warm bed, really good food, and the ability to contact your family, right? It's really important. So when we found out that Starlink was available in Alaska 2 years ago, we immediately moved towards it, and it has changed the dynamic of staying in touch with your family. Very, very little to zero turnover. Very blessed. The very first people that we started with are here. It's like a family atmosphere, which is something I greatly appreciate. Every year we'll sprinkle in 1 or 2 new people, and it's much easier to get those people, the new people, acclimated to the culture that we appreciate.
Working here is like working with family. Come every year, we go away every fall, and we come back smiling, happy to work in the mountains.
What a fantastic place to work, not just because of the surroundings, although I'm in agreement with Dan Cullen saying my dream is love to be there, cold in those mountains. Yeah, plenty of fish in those rivers as well, I would have thought. I'd love to have a bit of that. But yeah, just taking that extra bit of care. It's funny, I was speaking to one of the guys at a company called CM Labs, based out of Canada, while I was over in Kentucky, and we literally finished the conversation. We'd been talking about positivity and inspiration and stuff, and we got up, shook hands, and he went, "Right, let's go and spread some good in the world, shall we?" That's not a bad thing, is it? Not a bad thing. That on surround sound was cool. As one headphone and on radio in cab as well. Fantastic stuff. Wish somebody had told the guy to stop rocking. Although, did you see the size of his arms? Not sure I'd want to upset him. Big old lump, really was. And Andy Darvell, what a place to work. Stunning, yeah, absolutely. And imagine that, 4 months. You just go and basically cut yourself off for 4 months. You work 24, well, you don't work 24/7, but the mine works 24/7. And then after 4 months, when the weather takes a turn, you go back to doing what you were doing before. Nomadic lifestyle. Incredible stuff. We've got one more film to show you, which features the fine folks at Shantui.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
There you are. Shantui. Apparently that's out. Shantui, I think. I think that's how it's pronounced. I've never been corrected. I'm going with it. Yes, Shantui. They are talking sustainability across their range. Lots of electric and stuff. Stick around after this because I've got an extended morning monologue. A work of fiction, but based very much in fact, after a bit of this. Those Chinese are certainly embracing battery technology, aren't they? And I think we're embracing their battery technology as well. But yeah, fantastic stuff from Shantui. That pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very, very soon. Excuse me. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll be back in just a moment with our morning monologue after this. In the year 2000, Mel Gibson starred in a film called What Women Want. His character, Nick Marshall, was the kind of guy who thought he understood women because he'd once skimmed a self-help book while he was at the airport. He wore too much aftershave, smiled a bit too broadly, and assumed that every woman within a 5-mile radius found him irresistible. Then, a freak household accident involving a hairdryer, a bathtub, and some questionable decision-making gave him an extraordinary gift. Suddenly, Nick can hear women's thoughts. All of them. All the time. And it turns out they think he's a sleazebag, a fraud, a walking cliche in a designer suit. It's a painful but ultimately redemptive experience. Nick learns empathy, self-awareness, and the radical concept that listening might just be more powerful than talking. Now imagine that same miracle happening, not to a smarmy ad executive, but to a construction equipment designer. Meet Graham. Graham is 46, head of product design at one of the world's leading construction equipment manufacturers. He's got a master's degree in industrial design, a corner office, and a wardrobe full of polo shirts embroidered with the company logo. His desk is a temple of technology, curved monitors, CAD software, 3D printer, VR headset, the works. He's the man behind some of the most advanced machines on the market. At least that's what it says in the brochures. He spends his day perfecting touch screens and tweaking joystick haptic sensitivity. He prides himself on innovation, on progress, on the future. Until one Tuesday morning, while rushing between a Teams meeting and his third coffee of the day, Graham leans across his desk, catches his arm on a loose cable, and gives himself a minor electric shock. Nothing serious, just a jolt. But somehow it's enough to rewire something in his brain, because suddenly Graham can hear them. Not his colleagues, not the sales team, not even the engineers down in R&D. He can hear operators, all of them, all the time. The first voice comes from a test site in the Midlands. Bloody hell, it's like climbing Everest to get into this cab, someone mutters. I'm getting shin splints before I've even started work. Then another comes from a quarry in Norway. This machine has less legroom than a Ryanair plane. And then a chorus, hundreds of operators all talking at once, complaining, cursing, laughing, improvising fixes with duct tape and cable ties. It's chaos. Graham spins in his chair, clutching his head. What the hell? He glances at his prototype on the screen. Sleek, modern, elegant, a work of art, if he says so himself. But the voices keep coming. Would it really kill them to put a flat spot in here? Somewhere to put my lunchbox? Every time this screen updates, it beeps at me. I swear I'm being taunted by my own dashboard. I don't need Wi-Fi in my CAD. I just need somewhere to hang my jacket. Graham stares horrified. Surely these operators just don't understand. Surely they appreciate the technology. But the voices don't stop. At first, Graham argues silently. They just don't get it, he thinks. They're Luddites, resisting innovation. That's what people always do. But as the hours pass, curiosity replaces defensiveness, and he starts to listen. And slowly, painfully, it dawns on him. They're not wrong, but maybe he is. Every comment, every grumble, every sarcastic aside paints a picture he's never truly seen before. The daily reality of people who actually use the machines that he designs. The visibility issues that no camera quite fixes. The awkward climbs that leave knees and hips aching. the endless alerts that distract from the job at hand, the contortions required just to grease a fitting or to check the oil. For the first time in his career, Graham isn't seeing an operator as a user profile or a target demographic. He's seeing them as a person who just wants to get through a day's work without feeling like they're piloting a spaceship. The voices are surprisingly united. Despite coming from every corner of the globe, they all seem to want the same things: simplicity, durability, comfort, and the ability to do their job without feeling like they need an IT qualification. One voice cuts through the noise. I don't want more features. I want fewer that actually work. Another follows. If I wanted to scroll through menus, I'd go back to Facebook. Then a quieter one, almost weary. They design these things like they'll be driven by robots, but there's a human being in here. Graham winces. He remembers the design meetings, the PowerPoint presentations, the long discussions about user experience and the digital interface. He remembers nodding sagely as someone explained how operators would love the new connectivity ecosystem. They don't love it. They ignore it. They fight it. In many cases, they hate it. One operator comment really resonates. I want a machine to work with me, not to snitch on me. What they do love are simple things: steps that haven't been designed for a mountain goat, seats that don't leave their arse numb, maintenance points that can be reached even if you're not a 7-foot tall contortionist, engines you can access without dismantling half the machine, and storage, endless pleas for storage space. By lunchtime, Graham feels like he's been through a personal crisis. The designs that once made him so proud now look like vanity projects, exercises in over-engineering. Every feature he thought was clever now seems like a nuisance. Every ergonomic curve feels pretentious. Even his beloved touchscreen interface suddenly looks like a hindrance, an electronic inconvenience to be endured. He tries to focus on his work, but the voices keep interrupting. He leans back, defeated. For the first time, he sees it. He's been designing machines to impress other designers, not operators. He's been speaking the language of innovation, but ignoring the dialect of practicality. That afternoon, Graham takes a walk through the prototype workshop. He climbs into one of his own creations, a next-generation wheeled excavator, and he sits there, listening. The seat is firm, but not quite right. The joystick placement feels just a bit too far away. The control panel lights up like a Christmas tree before he even presses anything. The dashboard screen greets him cheerfully. "Good afternoon, Graham. Would you like to connect your phone?" He sighs. "No, I'd just like to start the engine." After several button presses, a menu selection, and what feels suspiciously like a software update, the machine finally coughs into life. He shakes his head. I've designed a masterpiece of inconvenience. He looks around the cab, visibility limited by pillars that looked good in CAD but bloody terrible in daylight. Barely enough room for his legs, and he's not a big guy. No space for a lunchbox, nowhere to set down a cup of coffee. And for the first time, Graham understands that he's been designing from the outside in, thinking about what the machine looks like, not how it lives, breathes, and functions. That night, Graham sits in his car, engine off, staring at the steering wheel. The voices are quieter now, but not gone. He starts to jot notes in a small notebook. Operators want, he writes, and he pauses. How do you summarize it? Not in technical language, not in marketing spin, just honestly. He writes, they want a cab that feels like a workspace, not a cockpit. They want steps that respect aging knees. They want visibility that doesn't rely on technology to compensate for poor design. They want to feel the machine, not be shielded from it. They want maintenance made easy, not mystifying. They want fewer interruptions, fewer warnings, fewer pop-up notifications. They want to start work, not launch mission control. They want their machine to be their co-worker, not Big Brother. He leans back and smiles sadly. All this time, he whispers, I thought they wanted innovation. Turns out they just wanted consideration. The following day, Graham walks into his office early. For once, he doesn't turn on his computer. He does something he hasn't done in years. He takes a blank sheet of paper and starts sketching. No touch screens, no digital assistants, no endless menus. Just a machine that does what it should, as simply and efficiently as possible. He rethinks the entry points, the seat, the visibility lines. He adds storage, lots of it. He repositions the maintenance panels so they're reachable without gymnastics. And when he's finished, he looks at his design and feels something he hasn't felt in years. Pride. Not in his cleverness, but in his machine's usefulness. By the time the voices fade completely, Graham has learned something Mel Gibson's character learned too. That sometimes the problem isn't a lack of intelligence, but a lack. Sometimes, excuse me. That sometimes the problem isn't a lack of intelligence, but a lack of listening. He's been designing to impress the boardroom, not the building site. He'd been chasing innovation for innovation's sake, mistaking complexity for progress. The operators don't want to fight their machines, they want to work with them. They don't crave technology, they crave simplicity. For the first time, Graham understands that progress doesn't always mean adding more. Sometimes it means taking things away. There you are. A work of fiction for your Thursday morning. How's that for you? How would you like those apples, I say? Let's have a look. Okay, let's go back to Chris Ford saying about the cement mixer, concrete mixer over on that Shantui video. The front of that lorry looks like a man. It did. An MAN, not a man. It didn't look like a bloke. Good morning, all, says Mick Norton. He is here. Haptic, question mark. Haptic. You know that feeling you get when you press a screen on your iPhone and you get that kind of feedback, that electronic feedback, kind of bit of a vibration. You get a bit of that. That's a haptic right there. Mick Norton, how do we get the CITB into a bathtub with a hairdryer? What a shocking suggestion that is. Jonathan Dowling just said Shakespeare. Jonathan, I appreciate the sentiment. I think you're getting a little carried away. He says, that was perfect. I'm going to start my day this morning with a crew meeting to hopefully source some feedback on their work environment. Hey, listen, if that even if Jonathan Dowling's crew say, there's just one thing I'd like to change, and that can be changed, then my work here is done. Fantastic stuff. Thank you for that, Jonathan. That made my day. Jim Turner says, every manufacturer designer can have this. They just need to put interested plant operators like me on the payroll. The wage guarantees our loyalty and silence concerning machine development and innovation. I feel for manufacturers. I do feel for manufacturers because you know that old adage of you can't please all the people all the time. That's the nature. And if you took 10 or 20 or 100 operators, I'm sure there would be a commonality of comfort, visibility, access, and all that kind of thing. But you would also probably end up with 10, 20, or 100 different things that, there's one operator who works in a particular environment who wants that particular thing to suit his application. I understand that. But I do wonder. And I wonder, I mentioned the idea of designing for the boardroom and to impress other designers. I think that is part of that. And I also wonder about the drive for differentiation. It used to be a case, back in the day where you'd launch a new excavator, for example, and what you were trying to do, it was kind of a one-upmanship. You would try to provide a bit more power, a bit more dig depth, a bit more reach, basically trying to outdo your nearest competitor or your biggest rival with a little bit more of things. Now we've got a situation where we have like a commonality of engines, transmissions. A lot of the equipment manufacturers are basically using the same parts and have the same features and everything else. And I wonder if that race has now become one of electronics and technology. We need to add another screen. We need to add another scroll menu. We need to add, we need to add, we need to add. And at what point, I mean, we've had this discussion before. You've now got the ability on a modern, I'll say excavator, but it's, it's common across a lot of machines now. You've got the ability to basically dial that machine to your own custom settings. So when you get your machine, you can set the revs, set the hydraulic flows for a particular attachment or for a particular application or a combination thereof. You can really dial that machine to your own specific requirements. But based on everything that everyone says here, everyone is doing that once and then leaving it. So did we actually need all that complexity in the first place? Or would it have not been easier for the dealer to say, okay, Jim, how do you want the machine set up? Like that. There you are. You haven't got all these bells and whistles there. There's not another screen in your cab. There's not another button on your joystick that you have to scroll through. There's no mission control. The machine is now set to you. Think about my wife's current car doesn't do it, but the old car used to. She had exactly the same model, but it seemed to have a few more electronics on it. So you'd get in, you'd press a button, and the seat would slide into the position that you liked it. But we only set that once. We didn't do it daily. It wasn't every time we started the car up. It was done once. Why would you want a system that required you to do that all the time? And they get access to me and solve problem-solving ideas. Jim, listen, I know you. I know it's something you say a lot. Every time I meet with a manufacturer, I tell them exactly the same thing. And the bizarre thing is, I was listening in on a conversation a while back between a young demolition guy, and somebody from Caterpillar. And if you get them in the right environment, even though the guy was pretty young, and Caterpillar are the world's biggest manufacturer, Caterpillar were more than willing to listen. It wasn't a case of whatever. It was actually this guy's got some good ideas. Dan says, "Wow, it's a fantastic piece. Well written, Mark. Thank you very much indeed. I'll take that all day long." Yes, Jim. Problem is they don't listen to guys that sit on these seats 9, 10, 12 hours a day. Manufacturers need to be interested in what people actually want. Yeah, and I mean, again, I'm not in a position. I'm not. It's not my job to defend the manufacturers, but I also wonder about the disconnect. I know some equipment owners will consult with their operators, on brands, on particular models, on particular things that they need. But there is a disconnect. You've got the manufacturer there, you've got the operator there, but you've also got the specifier in between the two, who is trying to get the best value that he possibly can. Obviously trying to get the very best spec that he can for the lowest possible price. And so I wonder how much of the pleas and the concerns and the hopes and the wishes of the operator actually pass up through that conduit of the specifier and the owner to the manufacturers. I wonder. And I also wonder, I realise that, Caterpillar used to call their system field follow. So they'd make a machine, make 20 or 30 of them, send them out to various parts of the world, various applications, to get feedback. And it was all done top secret. The machines were often not marked with their nomenclature and stuff like that. They would send them out and get the feedback, at which point they'd come back and say, okay, well, we need to tweak that, make that go away. Right, we're launching. Well, for one thing, 20 or 30 machines is probably not a particularly big cross-section. But also, by the time you've got to that point, you've already committed. You've already made 20 or 30 machines. And yes, you might accept tweaking, but you're not necessarily going to go back. If the operators all say, this is a piece of shit, you need to think again. Are they really going to go back to square one and start again? They're probably not. So the point that you start to get the operator input, it's too late. Some new machines, says Dan, are uncomfortable. They get air seats, but not great comfort, not as smooth as those you get in some lorries, with multiple movements and comfortable, actually reduce the technology. Yeah. I drove, I'm going back quite a while, and I'm not going to name the manufacturer because they're very different these days. I was invited on a launch of a skid steer loader a good while ago. Now, I am 5'10", and I have size 8 feet. So I'm not a big guy at all. Not a big guy at all. I got in the machine, and I quite enjoy driving skid steers. I think they're good fun. They're about as close to a toy as you can possibly get and still be able to do a job of work. But I got in there, and in order for me to actually have my feet where they needed to be, I had to sit with my feet like that. The column on which the seat sat and the front of the machine were about that far apart. So imagine how your ankles will feel if you spent 8 hours with your feet turned out. I'm sure there is actually a name for that in ballet. Is that first position or second position? But imagine doing that for 8 hours. And somebody within that skid steer manufacturer had deemed that acceptable. It's the sort of thing, if you had one operator, Bob, come and sit in here. Literally, the first thing they would have said was, "Where do I put my feet?" And that design would have been negated. Instead of which, it went right through the system, and it was launched. And then they turned it loose on a journalist, and then got awfully upset when I pointed out the fact that I had nowhere to put my feet. Dan says, "I get a haptic shock, but it's never fixed me." You're beyond hope, I think. Mick Norton says, "Your work of fiction today was quite excellent." Thank you, Mick. Maybe need to do a bit more of this, but not quite this far. Any chance you can help me with my sermon this week? Paul, I would listen. I will do anything to help my fellow human. I'm not sure. Not sure I'm really your man on sermons. But hey, you never know. If sermons include diggers and a liberal sprinkling of swearing, you never know. It might be the job that I was destined to do. Once you directly employ people, they become yes men, and they are actually what manufacturers don't want. Yeah, Jim, many a true word said. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not. I think there's a degree of that. I think there is a degree of that. And when you think about some of the manufacturers, and you have like a design lead or a design head, and generally they're very, very smart, very, very smart and very passionate and very committed to their. And I think that it is easy to surround them with yes men. But I think also nobody generally designs a machine in isolation. They're designed as part of a team. And I think if you're part of a team, even if you're quite a junior part of a team, even if you're a fresh set of eyes, a fresh set of ears, I think there is a tendency to get carried along with, we're about to launch a new excavator, and it's got, it's on hover pads or something. And I think you'd get so caught up in we're going to do a hover excavator. I am making this up, by the way. I think you get so caught up in that notion that you don't have the ability to step back and go, why would we want that? Why would we want a hovering excavator? I think you kind of get swept along. And yes, you ultimately end up becoming a yes man, possibly not for all the right reasons. The air seat on some machines are very stiff, only up and down. But I remember a Liebherr operating the seat had multiple movements. It was fantastic. Yeah. Again, I mean, we've mentioned this in terms of safety. We've mentioned this in terms of safety in the past, where I question why many safety features are an optional extra. In other words, you have to pay for them. It's the same with comfort in many cases. You can have this excavator with this air suspension seat. Comes as part of the price. But if you want a seat that's adjustable back and forth, side to side, you've got the lumbar support in there, it's heated, it's chilled. In other words, if you want a seat that makes your operator actually comfortable, extra. Should that not be a standard? Yeah, and bearing in mind the amount of time that you spend in a machine, if I went to test drive a car, not likely to do that anytime soon. But if I went to test drive a car and I got in it and you sit there and you think, this seat is a fucking nightmare. It's like I'm sitting on daggers. Well, that's game over. I'll be spending an hour, maybe 2 hours every once in a while in a car. We're talking about people spending 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a day in that seat. That seat should be optimum comfort, surely. Modular machine design, then cherry pick the features you need. Yeah. I think that's quite hard. I do think that's quite hard for manufacturers. I've said this before. You know, your Caterpillars, your Komatsus, your Hitachis, your JCBs, your Liebherrs, your Volvos are all very, very, very good at producing thousands, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands of the same thing. That, you know, they set up the production line, they set up the tooling and everything else, and they just conveyor belt of identical machines, which is largely why, you know, most of the major manufacturers don't have a full range of demolition equipment. Some of them have high reach options, and you know, like the likes of Volvo and Caterpillar and Komatsu have their high reach options, but by and large they leave a lot of that heavy lifting to the likes of Kokurik and Larini and people like that, because they're good at one-offs, while the major manufacturers, the OEMs, are not particularly good at one-offs. But a modular design where you could, I mean, I remember looking at the BMW website many, many years ago. I'd never buy a BMW because I'm not that guy, but I remember looking at that. I want that wheel trim, I want that steering wheel, I want that upholstery, and literally you could build the car online and say, okay, how much is that? Jesus Christ, that's a lot of money, but I'll do it anyway. Press the button. Surely that's doable. All projects, including design projects, should have UAT. What's UAT? Paul Latham says, one thing we're taught in pioneering ministry is to sit and listen to the community. A lot of the time, we come to community with preconceived ideas of what people want or need. Listening is key, whether working or designing machines or trying to change communities by the community. Story very quickly. Many moons ago, and I'm going back 25, 26 years, moved into a new house. I've told you yesterday, bought it off plan, bought this house, and it was part of a housing development. So Epsom, let me take that away for a second. Epsom town centre was here. We were about 3/4 of a mile up the hill here. About 300 homes, so well over 1,000 people, you know, by the time you factored in children and everything else. And we had houses, but we had no road. We had nowhere for the children to play. We had no bus service. We had no school. We had no GP. All the things that you would expect. So we decided to form a residents association to go back to Epsom Council and say, you need to sort some of these things out. Because I was a bit slow on the uptake, I didn't step back quickly enough, and they made me chairman of the residents association. And I went along to a council meeting, and I genuinely staggered by this, which is why it stuck with me for as long as it has. I said, you know, we've got none of these things. And the councillor responsible said, I'm really disappointed to hear you say that. We've spent 5 years working on the community there. The houses had only actually been up for about 6 months. So they'd clearly had a very, very preconceived idea, their preconceived idea of what that community would look like. Didn't take into account things that people really need, you know, somewhere for a young boy to kick a football, somewhere for a girl to play hopscotch. Do they still do that? I don't know. I'm old. What can I tell you? They hadn't taken any of that into consideration. Not even things like, you know, a nearby bus stop so that people could get into town and back out of town relatively easily and painlessly and cheaply. Hadn't taken, but they had been community building. What have they built? We never did find out. Did you notice most of these new cars are not as comfy as the older brands? Scorpio Ford, Old Merc and Toyota Camry, like sitting on a couch. Yeah. I mean, I think even more so, I think with cars rather than excavators and the like. I think everything these days is designed to price. You know, how cheaply can we build it? And if that means that, you know, driving, I mean, I do remember one of my first cars. I had a Volkswagen Beetle first, but my second car after the Beetle packed up and rolled over. I got a Ford Granada, a used Ford Granada, and it was way too big, way too heavy, way too wide. But man alive, it was like sitting on your sofa, acres of space, power steering, automatic box, just driving along. Oh, this is fantastic. Now, doesn't matter what you're driving, you kind of feel like, does that door really need to be that close? Yeah. Was in a Tesla recently, you could feel every bump on the road. Horrible ride. Funnily enough, my experience with one of the Teslas was actually very, very good. But when you're paying upwards of 35, 40, 50,000 pounds for a Tesla with all that tech, and you've got an uncomfortable seat, that doesn't feel right, does it? Imagine you're a big man getting into a machine and sitting in a cramped cab, yeah, and doing it day in, day out. We used to laugh, when at the early doors of mini excavators, when they were all coming over from Japan. We literally laugh at them, that if you're Japanese and 5'6" and you weigh about 7.5 stone soaking wet, this is the perfect machine for you. If you're a hairy ass digger driver from, I can't even think of an amusing place, from Hull. I don't know why I've gone for Hull, but if you're a hairy ass digger driver of 6'1", maybe about 17, 18 stone, they're going to have to use a shoehorn to get your ass in it. We used to laugh at that. Have we really resolved that? Have we? Mick Dunt says it wasn't unusual for the late Roger Bullivant to ring his head of R&D at 3 a.m, highlighting a rig operator's suggestion and idea to improve the piling operation. Bullivants built all their own rigs, and their operators were always consulted. How often do you hear that these days? Matthew A 2.0 over on Instagram. It's an interesting take. Companies focus on what you dream of having, letting you have it, and realize it's not the luxury you thought it was. You thought it would be, so you make another purchase. I wonder. I do wonder. I mean, obviously, we do have that notion of built-in obsolescence, particularly with things like this. Here it is. It's the iPhone 16 Pro Max. It is the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's the only phone you'll ever need. Until the next September, when Apple will produce another one that's slightly better and just better enough for you to go, oh, I suppose I better buy that, hadn't I? Yeah. Good point, Matthew. Well made. This another one. A lot of people who haven't been on multiple machines see the difference. Some are stuck to one brand and they think they're the best, but no one talks up to manufacturers about issues. I was at Hillhead, he says, and Plant Works, and yes, I pinned some manufacturers on some things, and they thanked me for my feedback. I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did. And, by and large, my experience is that manufacturers are receptive, but by the time they are being receptive, too bleeding late. The 679-6 is already out in the wild, and it would be out in the wild for about another 4 or 5 years until the -7 comes along. So, you might have had the greatest ideas in the world. You might have offered them insight that they'd never considered, but that machine ain't going anywhere anytime soon. That's still going to be with us in 5 years' time. Like Hyundai said, their hands were tied as why they downsized the engine hydraulic pump, because they want to reduce fuel consumption, but took away the power, which is why I have an issue with them, and Hitachi. It's a fine line, that one, isn't it? Just to go back, UAT, user acceptance testing. Never heard that expression before. You can tell I don't do this very often, can't you? Jim Turner, JCB have different spec machines coming down the same production line. It's definitely doable. It's doable to a degree. It's doable to a degree. But again, where JCB, as an example, excel is mass production. If and let's face it, they have, you can perfect the design of a 3CX and just produce 200,000 3CXs without interrupting that production line, without anything else. Dandy. Now, once they come off the end of the line and somebody wants a different seat put in it, or a different paint job, then absolutely fine. But actually making meaningful differences, I'm not sure. Then again, we're basing that on the manufacturing industry of today. We are starting to see, I think, a very real shift now towards the notion of hanging on to machines for that bit longer. Will that impact upon volumes being produced by manufacturers? First question. And if that's the case, will they then be afforded more time or more flexibility to say, okay, well, if you want the steering wheel over to the left a bit, we can do that because that's a part of the modular design. I don't know. Dan says, a guy on site here says he hates the Dash 7 300, one of the worst machines he's operated, low on power, hard to grade, and uncomfortable in comparison to the Cat 330s here on site. Yeah. But again, by the time, it goes back to that same thing. By the time it gets down to the operator, it's too late. Somebody above them has somewhere along the line made a decision to either buy or hire a machine that is a bit uncomfortable, a bit harder to get in and out of. The visibility isn't so great. It's a bit noisy and so on. Dan says the Granada was a classic and you thought you were a king. I did. Yeah, I mean, particularly when you think about moving from a manual shift 4-speed box VW Beetle that sounded like the end of the world to a Ford Granada that was sleek and stylish and cool, and it appeared in the Sweeney, so it was okay. I used to have a Mark IV Zodiac. Seats were 8 inches thick. Imagine the luxury. See, it's a bizarre thing to notice, but seat thickness. You fly Ryanair, and the back of the seats is roughly that thick. I've just flown transatlantic with Virgin twice in the space of a week or space of 7 days. And the seat backs are like that. Much, much nicer. Nice bit of recline on them. Not that I do that, because I don't want the person behind me to have to eat their breakfast off the back of my head. But very, very comfy. And again, horses for courses. I guess if you're sitting in the same seat for 9 hours, maybe you do want that additional comfort. But that is surely what we're talking about here. If you are an operator, you are, in fact, sitting in the same seat for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. They have UK and US spec 360s on the same line. That's a massive difference, but they're accurately doing it on a daily basis. JCB, listen, get Jim along. He's only up the road. Get him in. Tim Burnhope, if you're listening, get him in. Have a fantastic day, guys. And Mark, knock heads with LC International and see what you can come up with for a Saturday. May even get Nigel involved. I don't know if LC International are here still, but if they are, listen, we're up for a visit. Bunch of us. Let us know. Anyway, people, that would do us for today, because we have been going for a best part of an hour and a half. Have we set the world to rights? Maybe a little bit. I don't know. Maybe a little bit. Anyway, back tomorrow for yet more of the same. Please, please, please join us again for tomorrow. For tomorrow is the last day of the week. It is Friday. Friday, as we call it in these parts. Until then, everybody, look after yourselves. And let the manufacturers know exactly what they're about. Jim Turner, tried tapping him up, no joy. The problem is, of course, and again, not my business to speak in defense of the manufacturers, but I would imagine you are one of a large number of operators from around the world who would like an audience with Tim Burnhope to read in the Riot Act. Mick Norton says, back in the day, my Cat D8H dozer, a 3/4 inch AF spanner alone will allow me to undertake multiple tasks, including steering, brakes, and main clutch. Yeah, I get the impression that people don't want us messing with cars or machines these days, because there's dealer earnings to be had there, isn't there? We lock it up tight, lock it down, so you can't get a spanner anywhere near it, then we can charge you for the privilege of putting our spanner somewhere near it. Yeah. Andy Thornton, have a good one. Andy, you too. I'll see you all tomorrow for more of the same. Till then, everybody, have a fine and splendid day. See you later.